On this primetime news, Samsung's report card is out for the second quarter, and all sectors bow down to the tech giant's memory chip sector, which played a pivotal role in steadying the group's recovery somewhat. To help quell residual MERS fears, Korea's tourism ministry invites Chinese journalists to Seoul to let them know how safe it is to visit Korea now. A crucial clue in last year's missing Malaysia airliner case is found in the Indian Ocean. Malaysian and French investigators will determine whether it belongs to the ill-fated MH370. Stick with us for these stories and much more. Hello and welcome to Primetime News on this Thursday, July 30th. I'm Daniel Choy.
And I'm Hwang Ji-hye. Thanks for joining us. Samsung Electronics' latest report card shows net profit in the second quarter tumbled by 8% on year.
Though its mobile division suffered from stiff competition at the lower end of the smartphone market, the tech giant's memory chip sector helped cushion that blow. Our Hwang Ji-hye starts us off.
Samsung Electronics fared quite well in the second quarter, with profits inching up compared to the previous quarter. Samsung's operating income stood at $5.9 billion, continuing its steady recovery after an earnings shock in the third quarter of last year. Samsung's memory chip sector played a big role in keeping the company on the right track. The division logged profits of $2.9 billion, a 5-year high, and all-time record sales of $9.7 billion. Sales and profits edged up on quarter in Samsung's mobile division, but it's not performing anywhere like its heyday a few years ago. Although still the leader in the global smartphone market with 22% share, the Korean firm was the only one among the world's top 5 smartphone makers to see its market share drop in the second quarter. Samsung failed to meet strong demand for its latest Galaxy S6 Edge model, and handset sales in the lower end of the market slumped.
The momentum for Samsung's latest model launches faded pretty quickly, but the mobile sector will pick up in the second half as it's a better time for the ICT industry.
And that depends on how Samsung's new products sell. Samsung says it will reinforce its lineup of low-end smartphones for emerging markets and premium models for its high-end market. In a bid to recover its share in the large screen or phablet market in the latter half of this year, Samsung will unveil the Galaxy Note 5 and the Galaxy S6 Edge Plus model on August 13th in New York. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Now, the ugly succession battle at one of Korea's biggest business groups, Lotte, heats up. The younger son gained the upper hand in controlling the retail giant this week, but whether he will be able to maintain that grip is expected to be decided from a shareholder vote at Lotte Holdings on a date that has not been determined yet. Our Shin Se-min has more.
It's one of the biggest family feuds Korea has ever seen. The succession battle between the two sons of Shin Gyuk-ho, the 92-year-old Lotte Group founder, has made headlines this week. The mud fight began when eldest son Shin Dong-ju flew out to Japan with his wheelchair-bound father on Monday in an attempt to increase his shares in Lotte subsidiaries and remove his younger brother from the board. The latest twist? Within a day, the younger son Shin Dong-bin had called an emergency meeting of the board of Lotte Holdings, the de facto holding company of Japan-based Lotte Group, and fired his father, demoting him to the position of honorary president. With that, the second son had gained the upper hand and successfully prevented his older brother from taking over. That means Shin Dong-bin is now in control of Lotte companies both in Korea and Japan, whose combined sales amounted to roughly $53 billion as of last year. The drama at Lotte Group sent Lotte affiliate stocks soaring on Wednesday on speculation that the Shin brothers would start snapping up shares to solidify their control over the group. The question now is which Shin sibling will gain control of the key companies, like the Lotte Holdings and the Lotte Hotels based in Seoul. The two brothers currently hold stakes of roughly 20% each in the holding company, with the largest stake owned by their father. Some say the wrangling between the two siblings could eventually draw other family members into the battle. But for now, the younger Shin has lost the support of his eldest sister, the Lotte Foundation chairwoman, who has thrown her support behind her brother, Dong-ju. The younger brother may have gained the upper hand for now, but he still needs a larger stake in the group to become the leader of the Lotte empire. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
To boost the economy, the Korean government has sought to lift unnecessary restrictions in many sectors. This time, it's the turn of industrial complexes, which will be going through some fresh deregulation measures. Our Kwon So-ah shows us what they are.
The government is seeking to make it easier for Korea's industrial complexes to build more factories, get rid of or renovate old ones, and find more opportunities for integration between businesses. But it hasn't been easy, as some processes have too many steps or take too much time. The government says, based on on-site inspections to revitalize industrial complexes, there needs to be a stronger focus on deregulation. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy said Thursday it'll put an emphasis on easing 4 main regulations expected to be enacted by the end of the year. That includes expanding the variety of businesses in knowledge industries, such as IT companies or advertising agencies, as until now complexes were mainly home to manufacturing businesses.
Currently, it's impossible for businesses not determined by law to move into just any industrial estate. But now we will get rid of those entry barriers.
That would, for instance, allow a call center that interacts with the clients of a company at one of the complexes to work side by side with the company. Old factories that were located far away from welfare facilities will be placed together. There will also be fewer regulations on the timelines for disposing of industrial land, and the process of building new factories will get faster by increasing the number of counselors at establishment service centers as opposed to the current 1 person per center. Cutting red tape in the industrial estate sector has also been a main topic at an assessment of the government's regulatory reforms Thursday, led by Prime Minister Hwang Ji-hye, who also toured a complex to speak with workers and discuss inconveniences that small and mid-sized companies are currently facing. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
A group of Chinese journalists were invited to Seoul. This was to reassure them and China it's safe to visit Korea again since a de facto end to the MERS outbreak was declared. Our cultural correspondent Kim Ji-yeon followed the group to hear about their experiences.
Normally, during this time of year in this shopping district, Myeongdong in Seoul, it will be packed with foreign tourists from China. For many years now, they've been making up a majority of foreign tourists to Korea, but their number had nosedived by nearly 50% in the wake of the MERS outbreak to just under 350,000 last month. And data suggests that if further measures are not taken, it might not pick up anytime soon.
The Korea Association of Travel Agents says demand for travel-related products by Chinese visitors during the July to August period dropped more than 80% compared to the same period last year. In response, the Tourism Ministry has sought to reassure Chinese visitors that Korea is safe to visit. To prove its point, it invited a group of reporters from Chinese media outlets to Korea as part of efforts to entice Chinese tourists back to the country.
An exchange group comprised of 500 Koreans is scheduled to be sent to Beijing late next month. Their goal will be to ensure that cultural exchanges and tours between Korea and China go ahead as planned.
During their 6-day visit to Korea that started Wednesday, the invited journalists will have the chance to tour and report on Korean tourism after visiting some of the travel destinations favored by Chinese tourists.
This is my 3rd time visiting Korea, and I could see the number of people in touristy areas has decreased compared to before. During this trip, however, I also learned that Koreans are not largely affected by the MERS outbreak anymore. When I go back to China, I plan to tell my friends that it's safe to visit Korea again.
The ministry also plans to lure tourists through its annual Korea Grand Sale program, which originally takes place in the winter but will start next month and run through the end of October. During that time, local businesses in the tourism sector will be initiating promotional events and major discounts for tourists. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
And here's the latest on investigations on Korea's spy agency's alleged snooping of civilians. The rift deepens between the rival parties as they disagree on how to get the job done. Our Park Ji-won tells us more.
The main opposition party ramped up the pressure on the NIS on Thursday with revelations at a seminar it hosted at the National Assembly. There, panelists discussed the illegality of the spy agency's alleged surveillance methods and technological tools for getting to the truth of the matter. A research fellow at Citizen Lab, the University of Toronto research team that discovered that 21 countries, including Korea, had purchased the Italian spyware program, also joined in via video teleconference. He said based on leaked data from when the Italian hacking company was itself hacked earlier this year, the NIS asked the Italian company to add a feature to the program that would allow it to monitor conversations and messages on KakaoTalk, a smartphone application widely used in Korea.
There was an instance where hacking team employees traveled to Korea to hear the concerns of the NIS. And one of the issues, according to hacking team, that the NIS raised is that they wanted the RCS spyware to be improved or to add the feature to be able to spy on KakaoTalk conversations and messages.
He added, however, it's not known whether hacking team ever changed the spyware tool to add the function. He also said the NIS asked hacking team for support for a phone call recording function, specifically mentioning SK Telecom, Korea's mobile carrier. The Liberal Party vowed to uncover the truth behind the allegations, saying the NIS is threatening national security, implying a loss of credibility with the Korean public and in its intelligence gathering ability.
If we can't find the truth in committee, then we'll push for parliamentary inspection. And if the allegations are not resolved through a prosecutorial investigation, we'll need an independent counsel.
The ruling Selden party expressed concerns that the ongoing scandal could hamper the spy agency's cyber intelligence activities against North Korea.
We strongly believe that we should stop shooting ourselves in the foot when it comes to national security and destroying our own defense.
The Conservative Party stressed that the current allegations are based on speculation, not facts. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Japanese civic groups are calling on Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to include an apology in an upcoming war anniversary statement he is set to make next month. The 8 groups gathered in front of the Japanese parliament on Wednesday calling on Abe to apologize to the victims and countries that suffered under Japan's imperialistic past. They called on Abe not only to apologize, but put more effort into keeping the peace in the region. All eyes are on the statement, which marks the 70th anniversary of Japan's defeat in World War II. It's widely considered to be a second chance for Abe to resolve historical tensions with South Korea after failing to do so in a speech to the U.S. Congress in April. Staying on this topic, earlier this year, a group of American historians released a statement urging Japan to acknowledge its historical wrongdoings, which prompted many more historians to follow suit. And our Hwang Ji-hye sat down with Professor Mark Selden of Cornell University to learn about why he signed the statement and to listen to his views on Korea-Japan ties.
What were your reasons behind signing the statement?
The United States is not a direct party to the Japan-Korea-China comfort women relationship at that time, but we have our own issues related to it in terms of the Korean War, in terms of the U.S. occupations of both Japan and Korea. So these are issues that particularly concern us in the context of the fact that Japan and Korea and China are in the middle of a dispute about how to remember the history of that period and the comfort women and the larger issue of forced labor.
How effective do you think this type of collective response from world historians could be in getting Japan to fully acknowledge its historical wrongdoings?
So this is a process that is going on, and our letter is a small part of that, but it happens to come at a moment when a lot of things are happening. Both Japan and Korea have made applications to UNESCO for World Heritage sites. an issue in which the comfort women and I would say forced labor became part of that process. There are many things at play, and in which the Japanese government finds itself in a position of having to change.
Speaking of the UNESCO listing, what do you make of Japan's unofficial translation, leaving out forced labor?
Word games are going on. The Japanese refused to use the signature language of forced labor. The Japanese government scored a victory domestically. The Korean government scored an important victory internationally in getting on the table Japanese recognition of the comfort women system and other elements of forced labor. This is not a complete victory, but it's an important milestone, and we hope that it can be extended in future.
Many believe that the so-called Abe statement that will be released sometime in August could be a turning point for Korea-Japan relations. What's your expectation, and what do you think should be within this statement?
We can see that it's very easy and comfortable for Abe to apologize to the Americans, as he did brilliantly in Washington, D.C. There are many positive relations in the U.S.-Japan relationship at the moment. I don't see any reason to expect that his statements next month will go beyond these in terms of Japan-Korea or Japan-China relations. There may be references to forced labor and comfort women, using language very carefully nuanced to be comfortable for the regime and its neo-nationalist support. That's his political base. So I'm not expecting any major change around the issues of this kind.
Thank you, Professor Selden, for your time today.
Thanks so much. Pleasure to talk to your audience.
Expectations lowered, but we still hope for the best from Shinzo Abe. South Korea's defense ministry has rejected North Korea's demand to end its joint military drills with the U.S. Defense ministry spokesman Kim Min-seok said Thursday that Seoul must prepare for a potential invasion by the North, and added the drills can't be used as a precondition for talks between the two Koreas. On Wednesday, Pyongyang demanded Seoul and Washington end the drills as a precursor to dialogue. North Korea has often denounced the combined exercise as a rehearsal for a northward invasion. Seoul and Washington have long said the trainings are defensive in nature. Korea's demilitarized zone, or the DMZ, boasts unrivaled beauty and biological diversity, as it is basically untouched by man for more than 6 decades. And according to our Kim Hyun-bin, South Korea is pushing to turn the DMZ, a reminder of Korea's painful war past, into a symbol for a peaceful future.
This is the military demarcation line separating the two Koreas. It stretches across some 250 kilometers of the border and is at most points 4 kilometers wide. It's also the most heavily fortified border in the world. The DMZ, as is more commonly known, contains 907 square kilometers of land and accounts for almost 0.5% of the Korean peninsula. For 62 years now, the land has been untouched by man and is a sealed-off site of pristine nature, a safe home to scores of endangered species and wildlife. As a result, the DMZ has developed its own historic, environmental, and economic identity over the last 6 decades.
There are numerous types of species here from both Koreas, because this is the place where the ecologies of the two meet. The Ministry of Environment lists 171 endangered species, and the DMZ contains 75 of them.
In recent years, the South Korean government has been pushing to list the DMZ as an internationally recognized area of outstanding natural beauty. President Park Geun-hye has also expressed a strong interest in establishing an inter-Korean World Eco-Peace Park at the DMZ.
The goal of the Eco-Peace Park is to enhance the trust between the two Koreas and open up a section of the DMZ. But the most important part of that will be how well we preserve it. We need legislation to provide the funding to protect the area.
Despite the ongoing tensions between the two Koreas, the South Korean government is hoping to persuade North Korea to make the park a reality sooner rather than later. The DMZ, a long-term symbol of separation, could become a beacon of peace and harmony if a special park is established here. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News, Paju.
And for today's top international headlines, we now turn to our Lee Sun-ho at the News Center.
Today we're focusing on the discovery of the debris that may belong to the Malaysian airliner that went missing last year, the Fed keeping rates steady, and protesters in Portland dangling from a bridge.
But first, Sun-ho, do we have any confirmation on whether the chunk off the wing was from MH370?
Well, almost certain is the response that we have so far. It's been over a year since the mysterious disappearance of Malaysian flight MH370, but a new lead has been reportedly found of what may be the wreckage of the plane. A 2-meter-long damaged piece of wing was found on an island off the east coast of Africa. Malaysia's Deputy Transport Minister said it was almost certain that the wreckage was from a Boeing 777 and announced that the debris will be shipped to France for further investigation. Meanwhile, the Australian Deputy Prime Minister announced that the discovery was a major lead.
This is obviously a very significant development. It's the first real evidence that there is a possibility that a part of the aircraft may have been found.
Another important clue was found that was a number of the aircraft debris labeled BB670. Australia's Deputy Prime Minister said this could have been some sort of a maintenance number. If so, this would allow experts to possibly quickly identify where the debris is from. MH370 disappeared in March last year after leaving Malaysia to Beijing with more than 200 people on board. The U.S. Federal Reserve decided to keep its interest rate unchanged while also announcing that the economy and job market were improving. U.S. stocks finished on a high note on Wednesday following the news. The Dow Jones rose 0.69%, while the S&P 500 gained 0.73%. The Nasdaq Composite also contributed with a 0.44% increase. However, rates were indeed expected to remain steady this week, as it has been hovering at around zero for nearly a decade. The Fed did mention before it would raise rates once an economic recovery was maintained. Nevertheless, the central bank's comments on Thursday did not appear to change expectations among investors, who believe the first rate hike will likely take place in September or even December of this year. Over the past 2 days, the S&P 500 has bounced back since last week, when a massive sell-off in China's stock market took place. And lastly, the city of Portland saw a rather unusual but rather creative protest by environmentalists who dangled from St. John's Bridge to object icebreaker ships. 13 climbers from Greenpeace dangled from the northwest side of the bridge. They had signs questioning the Royal Dutch Shell ship called Fennica over its Arctic oil exploration endeavors. This was followed by another demonstration by about 150 kayakers and boats who protested the same issue over the weekend. The U.S. Bureau of Ocean Energy Management conditionally approved Shell's resumption of oil exploration in the Arctic, which had been suspended since 2012. Portland's bridge protest adds to a series of similar demonstrations against Shell, including an incident back in May in Seattle, when protesters took to the bay in kayaks and other small boats. And that does it for your international news update. I'll see you again tomorrow.
It was extremely hot today, and as of 3:30 p.m. Korea Standard Time, the Korea Meteorological Administration issued heat wave advisories to a number of cities and counties in the nation, and the humidity added to the hot conditions, making it feel hotter than the actual temperatures. And even one person has reportedly died of a heat stroke in Chungcheongdo province. So the heat is getting pretty serious in the Korean peninsula. So I'd like to give you some tips that will help prevent a heat stroke. Avoid drinks containing caffeine, such as tea, coffee, and energy drinks, as they can cause dehydration. And wear loose, light-colored clothing so you don't absorb so much of the sun's rays. And keeping plants indoors will help cool the air down. But if you have to be outside for prolonged hours, then you must take the necessary precautions, as the late July heat will continue unabated for most of the country for your Friday. And daily high here in Seoul will hike up to 32. And Daegu and Gwangju will see a high of 36 and 33, while Busan will top out at 31. And as for the other regions, it seems like Daejeon and Jeju Island will peak to 33 and 35, and even Dokdo will rise to 32 tomorrow afternoon. Now bear that in mind, if you're in the Seoul and the surrounding areas, there is a slim chance of pop-up showers tomorrow afternoon. Well, that's all for the weather. Good night.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thanks for staying with us.
We'll be back same time tomorrow. Goodbye for now.